that we often use is like the property ladder. It's like that ladder that like you pull down from the fire escape, right? And you got to pull the ladder down to be able to like get up to the fire escape. And everything that we're doing from a policy standpoint, from an input standpoint, is just making that bottom rung a little bit further out of reach.
That's a good analogy.
Right. And so you're just like, we have these homeowners that want to get into the market and they're just jumping and trying to reach to get to that ladder so they can get on it, and they can't get there. So, and the tariffs are gonna push that up as well.
Welcome to Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today we have a special in-guest studio, Sunny Bowman from Dakota County Lumber. We are talking for 20 minutes about tariffs.
Yes.
You mentioned, so we actually were just finishing recording your episode, which is going to come out in a few weeks from now. And you had just mentioned tariffs. I thought this would be a great topic for a 20-minute Q&A, because so many of my clients right now are asking me about tariffs, because obviously they're all in the news about everything. And I have not seen personally anything hit. I know a lot of builders that I network with across the country are saying, make sure, kind of back to the COVID times, of having contingency lines, having in your contract saying like, hey, anything beyond, pick a number, 5% variable is subject to a future charge, because ultimately we're going to have to pass these on to our clients. I mean, we can't absorb these. Anyway, that's about all I know about it. You are a lumber yard down in Farmington, Minnesota. We just had our interview. What are you hearing on tariffs, and how are tariffs impacting the world of lumber right now?
Yeah. So it has been an evolution over the last few months. And the issue I feel like in the industry right now, the reason why you don't feel like you're getting good information is because nobody has it. So I'm going to tell you what we've been hearing from our vendors and that sort of thing. But all of this could change. And even by a couple of days from now, when this comes out, like, you never know what's going to happen. We weren't really concerned early on. Like, I know that like during the presidential campaign, there was some talk of tariffs and that sort of thing. We weren't super concerned about what was going to happen, because there was a lot of kind of knowledge out there that was like, oh, this isn't a negotiating tactic, right? We are going to use tariffs as a negotiating tactic to sort of force other countries to do what they need to, or what's expected of them, and that sort of thing. So we were pretty zen about it early months. So were the economists that we were listening to. We're pretty zen about it. And then February and March happened. So we saw promises of tariffs going on, and there wasn't much movement in pricing up until the point in March when the 25% Canada and Mexico tariffs actually went on for a day. And then there was a reprieve for most goods, and timber was included in that. So technically there are no tariffs on Canadian timber right now, which is kind of the big one that our builders are asking about. And by no additional tariffs, there have always been some tariffs involved. So, but there's the promise that in early April, they'll go on again if things aren't sorted out. In the month since that happened, the tariff went on and then came off. It feels like the market woke up and was like, oh man, this might actually happen, and we're not going to get a whole lot of notice.
So they're pricing it in already.
Yes. Yeah. So commodities wise, there's a little bit of pricing in. It seems like what we're seeing more is that the manufactured products, so not straight timber, but the things that like timber would come into, there's some
like microlams, LSLs, like structural beams, trusses, everything. She's like, just keep naming them, and I'll just keep
windows with wood interiors, all that kind of stuff. There are people that are starting to take price adjustments early in anticipation that this might go up. I think that they're doing that. So the optimist in me says that they're doing that out of the goodness of their hearts to help smooth the transition for the builders as things go up. The pessimist realist in me thinks that like we see a lot of price increases that happen. Very rarely do we see price decreases. So potentially we have a few things going on. Input costs are going up. Like there's already tariffs on aluminum and steel, right? That's already happening. And those are inputs into products. So we've got decking brands that their aluminum railing has gone up 25% due to tariffs. And they adjusted their decking up 3% while they were at it because ambiguous input costs. And it's just a surcharge. It's going to go away if the tariffs go away.
But they don't.
But it's worked into their pricing. Yep. So I'm not naming any brands. You know who you are. But yeah, and so we're seeing that kind of across the board where I would say that it does sort of feel like COVID times, not with the wild swings in commodities. That was a supply side issue that we're not running into yet. Like we couldn't, well, actually a supply side and a demand side issue. Demand was huge, supply couldn't expand, and speculation went crazy. We don't have huge demand right now. We don't have COVID demand. And right now the supply is steady. So it's just kind of adding pricing in. So we're not seeing the wild swings, but we are seeing price increases every day. I mean, like literally multiple price increases a day from different vendors. We're getting
Multiple price increases a day?
from different
Oh,
vendors.
okay.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
No.
It's like, hey, we
Yeah.
sent you out a
Yeah.
LSL quote, and
Shoots ago.
yeah, no, I'm sorry, 2 hours ago we
Right.
were wrong. It's actually gone up.
But what I haven't seen is any guarantee that, so these price increases that are going in often ahead of tariffs, I haven't seen any guarantee that they won't then adjust
Up again.
So what you're hearing from your builder partner or builder cohorts and that sort of thing around the country is absolutely what we've been communicating to our contractors. Because there's so much uncertainty, I don't think any of us wants to sort of play the market and make a guess here, right? Like what needs to happen is there needs to be language in your contract saying that the end user, the homeowner, is going to pay.
We do cost plus
Yes.
on almost all of our, so we're sort of insulated with that.
Yeah.
I should have to look at it again to see if there's some sort of escalator clause on top of that.
Yeah.
What percentage of your builders would you even know if they're fixed bid or not?
Yeah, we're probably about half and half. I mean, that's
the real risk there is the fixed bid, right?
Yes.
They get a bid for you, let's just say 100,000.
Mhm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but most lumber bids are a estimate at the time. They're
Yes.
not actually a locked bid. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we are seeing people shorten their pricing windows already in the market where your bid was good for 30 days and now it's good for 14 or 7, which was a COVID move that they made.
I remember that.
Yes. And some of them extended back out and now they're shortening again. So the people that have fixed bids, like it's just not, I understand to an extent, every builder can run their business the way that they want to, and it makes sense what works for them. I think cost plus requires a lot of trust and like the relationship that the sort of thing that you build where you're willing to open your books to them and that sort of thing. And not everybody is equipped to have those conversations. However, if you are in a fixed bid situation, for sure a price escalator clause needs to get inserted.
What
back
would
in
be
there.
any idea what a normal number for those listening that do fixed bid?
Mhm.
I actually don't know. It'd be a good question I should ask
Yeah.
for future guests. What would be a number that says, hey, if I have a bid for sheetrock at 25,000, if that bid changes by 5%, 10%, 15%, at what point is it considered an escalated clause?
Yeah, I think that I would probably write in anything over 5, but I'm not a contract lawyer. But from what we've seen is things can swing sort of wildly. You have to look at your own business and understand what you're able to absorb as a business. But essentially if you're paying people's tariffs for them, like you're paying the tariff on their deck because you were trying to win that business by holding that price, like it's just coming out of your pocket.
I think the problem with that statement right there, because you're right, as a sophisticated business that you are running on EOS, and as we've already talked about in your previous podcast about how you run your business, and this isn't any shade on any particular builder, because I did this at one time, but like most builders are not sophisticated enough to know. It's getting better and better. I mean, with systems like Adaptive, with Builder Trends, with software out there that helps us manage everything. And bigger companies, obviously, you've got controllers.
Right.
Obviously, they do. But I would imagine across the United States, you have a lot of companies that are 5 or less people that are, you mentioned earlier about white knuckling it, that aren't really sophisticated. They don't probably know exactly. They probably don't even have a WIP report. They probably don't know where they're at 30 days. They just know they have to keep getting sales in to feed the meter, and they'll find out at the end of the year when the tax man cometh, what if they made money or not. I mean, it's depressing, but it's true. And that's honestly one of the reasons why I have this podcast, is to help elevate the awareness and education for people to be, oh, I need to look into that. I need help, because no one expects everyone to be the master at every one of these things. That's why you build a team. But the reason I'm bringing it up is you're mentioning like, oh, if it goes up 5% or you're taking a risk, a lot of people are not aware of the risk that they're taking. And frankly, as a builder, if you were aware of the risks that you actually were taking as a builder, I'm not sure anyone would be a builder. This podcast might be the shortest career move in my life, because you just like, everyone's just mass exodus from it, because it is risky. In the state of Minnesota, is we have very strong homeowner rights here.
Mhm.
And we have to warranty a house for 10 years. A lot of people in other states, when I talk to other builders, are like, excuse me?
Mhm.
We have our 1-2 warranty, 1 year craftsmanship, 2 years parts and mechanical, and 10 years structural.
Mhm.
I don't know the exact one. My lawyer friends would probably kick me under the table right now,
Mhm.
but I think like Wisconsin, it's like called the red light. I mean, when the truck disappears,
Yeah.
like you can kind of write whatever you want into the contract. It's much more open to that party and the negotiating. Hey, I'll take a price deduction. In our state,
Mm.
a builder couldn't say, hey, if you charge me 20,000 or 100,000 less, can you write your contract differently and I'll absolve you of all warranties? That's
Yeah.
illegal. You can't do that.
Right.
Anyway, going back to just the risk that we're taking.
Yeah. Oh no, and it's incredible. And I think going back to like we serve a ton of small business customers, almost exclusively small business customers at Dakota County Lumber, and whether they be maybe a bigger operation, a luxury builder, all the way down to a 1 or 2 person remodeler, deck building business, and yeah, I think it's a matter of where are you going to use your resources. And oftentimes, if you're a 1 or 2 person business, you got to be out there selling and you got to be out there performing the work and looking at the financials. That's the working on the business instead of in the business is comes secondary. And so that's the biggest thing is like, I don't want anybody out there listening to be surprised by the fact that they didn't make money at the end of this year because of the geopolitical environment, right? Nobody, your supplier doesn't have control over what the government is going to do and how these tariffs are going to go on because there isn't like the market runs on speculation, and we as lumber dealers sometimes will buy to try and get ahead of things based on expected patterns and that sort of thing. There is not enough capital out there for your lumberyard to buy to get ahead of the Trump tariffs. Like there it just doesn't, there isn't really a way. I mean, we're doing what we can and have, I think we're playing it pretty smart on our decking and our railing and some different things, but like they're not going to be able to smooth this out for you and help you ride it out to the like just like during COVID. It's like there was nothing we could do about that when OSB went up to $90 a sheet. Like we just had to pass that price on because it was 12 at the beginning of the year and then it was 90 in July. So like we're facing not that extreme of an environment, but something like that, something sort of similar to that, where there isn't enough information to be able to really play it right. So, as a builder, like I care about our customers making money. You got to protect yourself with your homeowners.
This episode is brought to you by Alpine Hardwood Flooring. They've been our partner now for over a decade, installing all our wood floors on all our new homes as well as our remodels. And on a personal level, Adam and Anthony Jankala, the owners, are just absolutely amazing people. They've been so supportive of my career as well as doing anything we need to make sure that our clients are happy. And they work so well with our other vendors and trade partners at not only protecting their product, but also ensuring everyone else's looks great. So if you're looking for a wood floor or for a refinish, I highly recommend Alpine Hardwood Flooring. My homeowner owns a business that asked me this question. He called me and said, hey, I'm seeing a lot of tariff chatter within my business.
Mhm.
And they're a much bigger company, a conglomerate. And I don't know if they do multinational stuff or not. And so obviously they're talking about it. I guess where it led to me, I said, from a labor standpoint, at least in Minnesota, all our labor is here. And so the tariffs are really going to affect products that are coming from overseas. And I know it affects things that I'm sure I'm not even aware of, like
Mhm.
obviously, but I think of like lumber, for instance, because that's what
Yep.
you are an expert in. What percentage of your lumber would come from outside the United States, number one?
Yeah.
And then two, with that chatter, can you redirect that and then just buy only from, is there a way around it where you would only source from the United States?
Yeah.
And what are the pros and cons of that?
Yeah. So unfortunately for the current situation, there is not enough timber production in the United States to compensate for how much we get from Canada. So
As a whole, or you specifically?
as a whole,
Yeah.
as a whole.
Any idea what the lumber industry at whole is?
Oh,
Like percent wise?
I don't want to. I don't
Okay.
want to quote it wrong, but I can
Yeah.
send you them if you
Yeah,
want to
I
put them
would.
in the yeah. Because I have a great contact that has the specifics. I want to say like 60 or 70%, but I don't remember which way
I
that
see.
goes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I mean, it's a lot that's produced foreign or that's sourced foreign, like the OSB and Southern Yellow Pine and that sort of thing. Often comes from Southern United States, so that's a little bit better, but it still is supplemented by Canada. The hope I think would be that eventually domestic production could get ramped up and we could be self-sufficient. That's a multi-year game. You can't just all of a
Flip a
sudden,
switch,
yeah,
I know.
flip a switch and have logging infrastructure and timber and mills and that kind of thing. I mean, we have great timber, but it's not accessible and all of that kind of stuff. So this is gonna there isn't an easy fix of like, oh, we'll just shift production domestic. And I think like the hope often was that some of the domestically manufactured products, because a lot of building materials are manufactured domestically, the deckings, the some of the railings, the window brands, like a lot of that stuff is produced here, that we would be insulated from it. But unfortunately, a lot of their sources come from overseas. And then again, we're seeing people taking moves because if you're competing against a European window brand, for example, and there's a X tariff on European goods, well, you just all of a sudden have more runway for pricing in the market as a domestic manufacturer. Like
So you could increase your margin.
you can increase your margin and not leave the dollars on the table that maybe you feel like you've been leaving on the table the last couple of years with increased wages and inflation and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I would love for everybody to be altruistic and be like, oh no, like it's domestically manufactured. Our inputs haven't gone up. We're going to stay exactly where we are, but that's just it's not reality. I think that I wouldn't as a builder worry that my costs were going to go up 25% because your basket of goods is mixed. And so it will be lower than even if a 25% tariff is on, what actually affects you will be lower than that. But what percentage, like the economists are trying to figure out right now, like what a typical percentage of tariff impact would be. I think they're looking at the big national home builders and analyzing their inputs and you kind of seeing, but everybody makes different choices as a builder. So it's really hard to say, but definitely protect yourself.
Well, and it's unfortunately not only in Minnesota, but across the country. I mean, we are in a housing shortage
Yeah.
and we are in a price increase.
Yes.
And so it's really difficult. How do you make up? Like I know it was just mentioned here recently when we went to meet with the senators and the House of Representatives through Housing First, they kind of put on a day at the Capitol and it was 110,000 units short of what our population needs.
Yep.
6 years ago, it was 50,000. So we've more than doubled in 6 years and we're going the wrong way. And yeah, I mean, every builder out there, like we need more building, we need more creation, we need more homes built. I mean, everyone's in favor of it. The problem is, of course, we have a lot of money sitting on the sidelines, right? I think they call them the golden handcuffs. I think in Minnesota, at least, I think it was 75% of people are at 4% or less for mortgage rates. And I'm not a big believer that mortgage rates solve everything, because there's a lot of other things that go into play there. But all these costs add up, and I know commodities prices fluctuate, they go up and they go down. And you mentioned that some of these little small fees, though, they get added, they don't really come off later. And I mean, they definitely keep just going up. But for sure, labor, I think when labor adjusts, like labor stays, like the going rate of a trimmer or a framer or an electrician, like once those, and they've been slow to adjust. I think really through COVID, they didn't adjust much, but they really adjusted pretty hard in my experience. I think it was like 23 seems specifically like they finally lagged and they kind of bumped up. And you look back at what we could build a home just 3-4 years ago for compared to now, and you're like sort of blown away.
It's crazy. And like sometimes when I am doing advocacy stuff and talking with people at the Capitol, like the metaphor that we often use is like that the property ladder, it's like that ladder that like you pull down from the fire escape, right? And you got to pull the ladder down to be able to like get up to the fire escape. And everything that we're doing from a policy standpoint, from an input standpoint, is just making that bottom rung a little bit further out of reach.
That's a good analogy.
Right. And so you're just like, we have these homeowners that want to get into the market and they're just jumping and trying to reach to get to that ladder so they can get on it, and they can't get there. So, and the tariffs are going to push that up as well. Interest rates are interesting because I think that we want them to come down so that home building comes back online. But when they do come down, if a bunch of existing homes come on the market, that's going to put some downward price pressure on the market. And as builders' inputs are going, it's just going to squeeze new home builders, squeeze their margins even more. So there's that. I've heard some things that remodeling and bigger remodels will come back online at a higher interest rate before people are willing to move. People might not be willing to move, but they might be willing to remodel. So like that is on the near horizon. But I do think that all of the kind of uncertainty around tariffs, it's almost like we scooted back to last year during the election where everybody was like, I'm just going to wait and see what happens. and then I'm going to move. We're starting to hear a little bit of that anecdotally from our builders and our remodelers that, like we're okay, but people are starting to say like, oh, do you think I should wait until all this tariff stuff irons out?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I just had a call yesterday with a friend of mine, and it could be just be spring in Minnesota. It's March, it's sunny out, and it's nice and warm.
Everybody's thinking about their home projects.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it happens every year. I would say it happened about 2 weeks ago. We had a really warm day. It was like, 60 or 70? It was like crazy warm for Minnesota that time of year. And really ever since then, and I'm getting a lot of calls, a lot of interest, a lot of emails. I just see a lot of movement. I can't say that specifically I've had a meeting with a client here in a couple hours that is for a new build of our strata, but a lot of it have been remodels that we won't take on, or new homes that's not, it doesn't relate to what I can do. But I'm still excited to see that kind of movement. And I love the ocean. So I think about the ecosystem of the ocean. You need everything from the plankton all the way up to the great whales, big sharks and whales. I mean, you need a healthy system. And right now I'm seeing a ton of activity just in general. And so that has me actually pretty optimistic about what I think this year can hold. But obviously there's a lot of uncertainty. So if there was just some stability, I mean, markets in general don't like instability. So if there was any form of stability, which we might not have for several years, it would be my guess. But anyway,
that's true. Yeah, it's wild. And no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, I think that everybody watching this, like maybe there's a plan at play, maybe there's not, depending on which side you fall on. But the administration isn't telegraphing the plan because that wouldn't be good negotiation and that sort of thing. So the markets, and specifically our market, our industry, are going to be left kind of hanging on by our fingernails here for a little while. And we're just like, what we're doing at Dakota County Lumber for us, for our business personally, is we're just executing on our own game plan. We're just head down, one foot in front of the other. We're going to keep doing customer acquisition and doing the right thing and serving our builders well. And I think as builders, definitely it's like, well, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And my dad used to say all the time, we're a big sports family. And like, if I was playing tennis and the court was wet, or like I'm playing lacrosse and the field's muddy, he's like, the field's muddy for everyone. Like the field's muddy for the other team too. So like as builders out there, it's like the tariff, nobody's escaping this tariff environment. What you can do is you can execute on your game plan well, communicate well with your customers so they're not feeling surprised, partner with them, be an advocate for them. But the field's muddy for everyone. Nobody's escaping it.
Yeah, no, 100%. My family motto was, it's funny because we weren't like a big family of sailors, but my dad used to always say, steady at the helm.
Yeah.
Some days it's sunny, some days it's windy, some days it's a hurricane, some days the wind's in front of you, but just steady up and down. Thanks for coming on. If you're tuning into the Curious Builder podcast, on Thursdays, we have our 20-minute Q&As, and Mondays, we have our hour episodes with builders around the country. Thanks again for tuning in to the Curious Builder podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like this episode, do us a favor, share it with 3 other business owners. The best way that we can spread what we're doing is by word of mouth, and with your help, we can continue to help other curious builders expand their business. Please share it with your friends, like and review online, and thanks again for tuning in.